Julia, and I am going to be leading tutorial 2 for assignment 1B on elevations. To begin, we're going to download the materials we need from Rhino. So click on your studio by selecting their name. The students in my section will be clicking on my name. So we will need to download the 4 cardinal elevations here. I've included an extra one just for reference, but these are the 4 you need to download and save. We will not be having a Rhino template file for this one because we will be drawing from the material we drew in assignment 1A. Please talk to your studio instructor. It is possible that they did create a template for you. However, in this tutorial, I will show you how to duplicate your file and rename it so we can use it moving forward. So before we go into how to draw an elevation, let's quickly discuss what an elevation is. So an elevation is a orthographic projection of an object or construction on a vertical picture plane. This definition comes from Francis D.K. Ching, which is the author of the book that's recommended, and I think you should get it if you have a chance. It's really helpful. And so basically, it is a flat image that's created from the various corners and details of the structure, and it's projected forward to become two-dimensional. Another definition comes from Wikipedia, and it says, an elevation is a view of a building seen from one side, a flat representation of one facade. This is the most common view used to describe the external appearance of a building. Each elevation is labeled in relation to the compass direction it faces. Example, looking north, you would be seeing the southern elevation of the building. Buildings are rarely rectangular in shape, so typical elevation may show all parts of the building that are seen from the direction. Looking at this drawing, we see that this is the north arrow pointing north, so that the south elevation, you'll be looking north to see the south facade. So the direction of the elevation aligns with where the plan, the side that the plan faces. So the south elevation will be the south side, etc. And this will become very clear once we start drawing our elevations. So let's open up Rhino. So go ahead and open up your file from assignment 1A. I have mine open. I've already drawn in all my lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this file by going to File, Duplicate, and you'll see it's now renamed 1A to Duplicate. I'm going to change the name to 1B to correspond with this assignment, and we're going to delete the duplicate. And I'm going to move it back into the main folder, and voila, it's renamed. And so now we have our new file. To begin working, I'm going to take a copy of our floor plan, and I'm just going to move it to a new space to give lots of room to draw our elevations. Something you probably discussed in your groups while you were making your plans is that there are several different plans that vary in details, such as the size of the door width or how things are represented. I know in some of the plans we saw this was a door or a window, and so what you have now and what you've decided as a studio is what you're going to be using going forward. You need to make sure that all of your construction documents match, or all of your architecture drawings match the plan. So you will be using these as your reference when we make the elevation, and it's possible that the elevation you're using will not align perfectly with the plan, but we'll get to that later. So let's go ahead and turn off our plan image because we no longer need it, but we will need to put in our elevation images. So let's create a new sublayer in our picture folder, and we will name it Elevation Images. So do your best to try and keep in the same style of naming layers. It is just as good practice. So now we select that layer, and let's import our elevations that we downloaded using the picture command or picture frame if you're using a PC. So I will go to where I saved my files. You Hopefully you save them in a very organized way too. So right now it doesn't matter about how you're going to scale them or what size you're putting them in. It is more about, we will fix that later. What is important though is that you know that not all plans are oriented with the top facing north. In the case of the U house, the entrance is the north elevation, so north is actually over here. Yes, and south is here, so it's important to discuss that to make sure you have your elevations placed rightly. So we have our north elevation based on the north side. Let's go ahead quickly and pop in our other ones. Don't worry about scaling just yet. Hitting enter will automatically redo the command you just used, so and it's useful if you're going to do the same command over and over again. And what's this from the west? Okay. All right. So for this tutorial, we're only going to be doing the north elevation, but know that the same principles will be applying to the other ones. So we are going to start using a lot of def lines to mark and make guides for recreating our elevations. So this is similar to when we created a grid for the plan that helped us keep everything in alignment when we were drafting. So now that we're on the def layer, which is a no print layer, or it should be, and if it's not, go ahead and make sure it's set to no print. So we're selected in the def layer, and we select the outermost edge of the building. So this is going to be this edge, and we're going to extend it down towards our drawing. Okay, now we are going to do the same on the other side, and we're just going to select the outward edge that will appear in the elevation and just bring it down to our reference image. Now to scale it, we're going to move one edge of our reference elevation to line up with one edge of our def points that we just drew. It looks like this, and then we're going to use the scale command to scale the image to align with our plan. So you'll make sure you have your snaps on, and you will snap to one edge, and then either in ortho mode or holding shift, snap to the other edge, zoom in so you get a nice exact line best you can, and you will click on the other line you made. So both these lines now line up with this, and our image is scaled. Let's continue to make some def lines, but first let's lock our picture frame so that we can draw a little easier and don't have to worry about moving it around. So we're going to continue to go through the plan, and every time we see something like an aperture or protrusion or even the steps, we are going to take a line and extend it into our elevation drawing space. So let's start here. These step edges we are going to see at elevation. And then we'll notice here that this elevation doesn't show the steps going all the way past the entrance door. But if we look at our plan, that we see that they do. And so this is one of those instances where an architect has these two plans are done by different people, and they've shown it differently. So we're going to go by our plan, but we can also look at an image actually on this to kind of figure out what's actually going on. So we'll bring one in. Let's find what you have images. Let's see if we can find a front view and front exterior. Here we go. So it's good to kind of just plop some of these images in there because it will help you kind of understand what's going on, because sometimes it's hard to tell within plans. There's another one. Oh, I think there's a better one. Anyway, we're going to use this one. do front perspective. That's what I think I was looking for. So yeah, here's another one that gives us an idea of what we're actually trying to draw. So we see that these steps do extend, so this is the correct plan and that's how we're drawing it. So let's go ahead and relock this. Oops. And get back to our depth layer and start drawing more guidelines. So we got our steps. Now let's go ahead and draw the door. And if you don't already have it on, this will be easier if you just have ortho mode on. And so this will be our plane. Let's go ahead and draw our plane, our ground plane in, just so we make sure we put all of our vertical guidelines to the base. Okay, so let's keep going back. And here's the edge of our door. And let's see. Looks like here's the edge of one of our steps. And again, you'll see that this doesn't really line up perfectly, but that's okay. We are going to be using how we drew it in our plan. That one looks like it matches pretty well. And then we need this one too. And so we've got this one, and we'll have to make these 2 steps. And the edge of this wall thing, which also is going, oh no, it's different. Okay, and then just so we know where to start an underground line, let's put the property border in this here. So now we have our depth lines. You might have noticed that I didn't draw them for these weird block things that are in front of the structure. I'm going to go back and do those afterwards, but I'm going to work on getting the main structure first, because if I put all of the lines for that, it would be quite confusing. So now that we have our vertical guidelines, let's do some horizontal ones. So for the steps, I'm just going to offset the ground line. And I'm going to guess this is about 5 inches. That looks pretty darn good. So we're going to do 5, and we're going to offset it again. 5, oops, right there. I think this, yep, the step goes up one more time. Let's go ahead and offset it. All right, and then Reggie, sorry. All right, and then let's make some lines that correspond with the height of these. And this also helps you analyze the facade and kind of see any trends that are going on in there. Okay, so now that we have our depth lines set up, let's go ahead and lock that layer. First we have to move off of it, and let's lock it so we won't move them around. So it's possible that in your studio you had used a different line weight system. Sometimes architects will create different layers for different objects such as doors and windows and walls. I followed the graphic standards we'd used for assignment 0, and we just drafted in line weights. We're going to continue to use that same line weight system for elevations. However, do talk to your individual instructor about what you're doing in your studio. And we're going to keep pretty much the same with the exception of adding a heavier line. In elevations, differences in line thickness help convey distance, Um, so the thickest line is always going to be the ground line. So we're going to make a new sublayer, and we're going to name it line heaviest. And so this is 0.35. Let's make this 0.35, and then we'll make this one just a little bit lighter. Made our heavier line. Let's go ahead and draw our ground line. So we're going to use the lines we created to mark the edges of the property as our guides. So I want to go ahead and change our ground line to a different color so that I can see its context. I notice also that I now have set it to print at cyan. I wanted to print as black. So this, if you didn't know, is a print color, and this is the display color. So our ground line is now in place. Let's do our heavy lines. In elevation, heavier lines are used to show the profile of the building and on the facade most closest to you. So anything that is a profile of the building or anything that jets out will be outlined in a heavy line. We'll notice that, let's see if we can see it in this one. Okay, it's not. But the U house has this wall back here that is more in the distance that shows up in the elevation. That'll be not outlined in the thick, it will be outlined in the medium to create a sense of distance. If you ever go outside or you like look in the distance, you'll notice that things far away are more hazy or lighter colored. Things close up tend to be sharper. So that is why the line convention follows that. So let's make a polyline and let's begin. So we're going to trace our steps. And again, notice here that our steps and where they end does not line up with this elevation we're using. That's okay. Let's just go ahead and use our def points to make our border. All right, so also as I'm doing this, we see that this is a curved edge, not a sharp 90-degree one. So we're going to have to go back and make some fillets or fillets, and we will do that probably towards the end. All right, so now we've got these there, and let's draw that down. And again, our elevation doesn't exactly match our plan, so we want to make sure our elevation matches our plan. That makes sense. Hopefully it does. So we want what we're drawing to match the plan we already drew. Ooh, that's actually very hideous. Okay, so now we're going to make our polyline. And since that last one is a little wonky, you need to make sure that everything clicks onto its intersection, or else it can get very wonky. So it's important not to get too fast and loose, or some of those weird lines will come in. Okay, so we've got that, and then we also need to use a thick line to outline the door as it protrudes. And I'm going to use the medium line for the rest of the door because it's probably not quite, if we look at this, it's kind of blends in there. So I feel like I disagree with how this person showed the elevation. We're just going to do a medium line, or actually we're going to do a thick line for the door. Well, it looks like I may have forgotten to put my door in. I'm going to really quickly go back on here. Sometimes you miss lines or features, and that's okay. You just go back and put them in. So here's my door, and I notice I also missed drawing it in here. So it's back. Now let's go line and shut it off. Okay, so let's do some medium lines. So before we do that, let's talk about thick lines. Thick lines, like I said, are the border. Medium lines are generally um, features that are not borders. So we'll be doing this light as a medium line and the steps. So to do the steps, let's just go ahead and make some nice lines. So we already did this step. That goes to here. So we'll just drag it all the way to the other edge. I'm going to do the same for this little friend. And we'll connect it here. And then we have one more, and we'll have to draw this one individually. There's this one here. Looks like we're probably not even going to see this step created once we put the other box things in, but that's okay. We'll see. You never know. All right. Looking at this, it looks like the door step is a little bit of a step up. It looks like that works pretty well in there too. So we'll go ahead with what this elevation shows, and we're going to trace the door. Ortho, put there, and drag that down. We're going to want to make our door. And these don't perfectly match, but that's okay. Now let's make this light thing. So I'll click these. Let's do polyline. Make head and put the def line. Okay, so now we have that done, and we'll need to make this wall back here. And we're going to make that in medium and not heavy because that is farther in the distance and we want to convey that. So really quickly, let's go ahead and turn off our def points and we can see what we have. So it's looking pretty good. Very simple. Let's put this back on, at least our picture, and we've got these def points. That we're done with these def points. We honestly don't need them anymore. I'm going to delete them. Sometimes it can be hard to delete things that you made, but it's better just to clean up your file. Little guy here. All right. So let's make the def lines for these little rectangle strangenesses. These I'm just going to copy them by clicking in the corner all the way across. Okay, so I've got enough of those. They line up more or less pretty well with what we have in there. So let's do another line for our top. And here we go. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the picture layer. And I'm going to make a rectangle. And for these, oh, I lost my ground line. But I definitely draw these since I just deleted them. And let's get this going. Alright, And sometimes, sorry to be disjointed, but if you notice something's not right, if it's a short fix, do it then. Otherwise, there's a good chance you will forget it. So go ahead and lock these. And using the heavy layer, now got renamed, we're going to make a rectangle and just copy it across. So get this here. Actually, I'm going to select it. Okay. I don't know if you heard that weird noise that just happened. And I deleted that line at the bottom so that we didn't have an extra thick line in weird spots. So I'm going to rejoin it. And now I'm going to copy it. So you don't want double lines. That will show up and it's not tidy. Working habits. You could also potentially use array and make array this 10 times. It's a fairly few amounts, so I just copied it. Go ahead and turn this off, and we're going to need to trim out the steps and the light behind it. So I just select everything that is going to be everything and more that we want to trim, and using the drag to select, I delete the inside. Clean up our drag. Oops. See. Voila. All right, so we have got our elevation. And if we want to see how ours looks and compared to the image, we'll just pop it back on. Looks pretty good. One thing you'll notice in this image is that the person who drew it used vertical lines in increasing proximity to convey a sort of gradient to show the distance, because you cannot see curves in elevations because they're projections. To kind of really quickly show why, I'm going to make a cylinder. Kind of look like this. Let's make it 15 feet. And let's look at front view. So let's look at this in perspective. So in perspective, we see it's a big curve, kind of like what we have in the U house. However, if you look in front view, there's a friend. Let's put this in shaded. You can see that it is indeed rectangular looking in a orthographic representation. So that's why, let me just delete this really quick. So that's why in our elevation that we drew from, they have these lines, and then if we look at the plan we used to draw it, they have a gradient. We're going to try and use the gradient to show distance as well. It's a new feature in Rhino 7. I'm only recently familiar with it, so let's see how it goes. All right, so to use the gradient, we will treat it like a hatch. So select the areas, select hatch, and click the regions you want to keep. So we will be wanting to do the area that's curved, and there's this little thing, there's this little spot next to it that I want to do. And we hit, oops, hold on. Forget that, we have to make a new layer. All right, go to graphic standards, new sublayer. I would say pattern gradient. And let's keep it black, and maybe let's make it, I don't think it matters because it's a film. All right, so now we go onto our new layer and repeat what we just did. All right, and so we'll select boundary, and we want linear reflected, and let's do 2 stops. So I'm going to go to edit, and again, if your house isn't curved, you will probably not need to do this. You'll talk to your individual instructor about how you want to represent various features. If there's brick or wood or stone on your facade, you guys will discuss the techniques you'll use. So what I did is I just dragged this out so that the darkness goes and you can begin to see it. I'm going to edit color real quick. We want to make sure it's fairly translucent so it shows up nicely. Okay, looks good, looks good. Great. So now we have that, and I might follow the trend and hatch a little bit at the door, just so I have visual consistency, the same way that the other person who was drawing did that. Okay, so let's move to hatch. Okay. And actually don't want to grade it. I just want to solid this time. And let's see, how do I know I can edit the color. Let's do this. And let's edit color. And I won't play around with this too much because I know not every group is doing it. So I'm just going to make it fairly translucent. Okay. So there we have our U house, the gradient to convey depth. And there's more information about line weight, drawing conventions in the handout that you got that will help with this. If any of it was not clear. So we're going to make a new layout for this assignment. It will make 4 new layouts, 1 for each side. So let's go ahead and go to our layout page. And let's take this plan and let's copy it. And let's rename it. Use the same conventions. And 1B, north elevation. Okay, so make sure we click on it. We'll need to change these. Okay, so this will be elevation, apply, and then my section is going to be doing our elevations at 3/16. Please talk with your own group and instructor about the scale you'll be using. Let's change the date. Let's do it for Friday, 17, 1921. And put your name, make sure your studio section is correct, and let's change the assignment. So we'll do assignment 1B, elevation. Okay, so another thing is we do not need north arrows in our elevations. So now let's put the right image in here. So it looks like I locked the scale. We don't need that. So we're going to go just select what we have. And then zoom selected, or ZS is the hotkey. Now that we have it centered, let's scale it. So we'll make our model for 12 inches equals 1 foot. And then we'll do 3/16 for our layout inches. And here we are. So there we go. And we will go ahead and copy this one for east, west, south, etc. So I will just make one more, and you will see. So here's our south elevation. I'll go ahead and change this. And you will repeat for the other sides. Now to go back to our drawing space. Ooh, look, it turned pink. That's fun. We'll need to put in the other images. So we'll go to our elevation images. We've already got these here, and it's important that we rotate them correctly. So as this is the east elevation, we need to orient it so that the top of the image faces the plan. Likewise, we'll do this. And if you have ortho on and you use a gumball, that will make sure it spins cleanly. And so then you'll begin the next side. So let's say I want to go next to the east elevation. What you can do is you can go to the camera when you're in properties viewpoint up here. So nothing is selected. We're just looking at the top viewport. Everything you'll be doing in elevation is top viewport, and you will put 90. And we have rotated our drawing space 90 degrees, and now we can see, well, this is west elevation, and we can begin the process all over of drawing, our depth lines, scaling it. So for this one, we'll bring down the edge of the building, and we'll draw a line from the edge of the building, and start all over. So that kind of brings us to the end. Please let me or your studio instructor know if you have any questions. Look, that's kind of already there. All right, good luck. Thanks.